Hey guys, what's up? My name is Keldon, and today we're playing some Fallout 4. That's not the real reason you're here. The real reason you're here is for Fallout 76. And recently, the teaser trailer for Fallout 76 dropped, and my god, I've watched it so many times. I'm such a huge fan of the Fallout series. I'm such a huge fan of both Fallout and Elder Scrolls. I would just say this, get out of the way now. Absolutely massive fan. I can never wait for the next game of either series to come out. So to see this teaser has been absolutely amazing. Now I've seen a few bits online on YouTube, a few fan theories, a few theories here, there, and everywhere, and I just want to basically chuck my 2 pence in because I'm a huge fan of the series. As soon as I saw a trailer, I started to delve back into the timeline, looking at things from a different angle, seeing what other people were giving as theories, and I thought, there's a couple of things that I saw that people were saying that I thought, actually, I don't think you're right. But obviously, when the time comes, I'm probably going to be completely wrong. I kind of hope I'm not. I kind of hope I am. I kind of hope Bethesda have everything locked tight in a neat little package this time, and there will be no inconsistencies. But let's get into the timeline. Let's get into a few little bits and bobs. So as we see in the trailer, this is going to be set on the 27th of October or the 21st, depending on how you look at that little dial. 2076. Now, I would say it'd be the 27th of October because if I'm right, yep, the Great War started on October 23rd. So you kind of think that I'll get into it a little bit later on why I think it would be the 27th, but it's just because of that date. I think that what they're celebrating in the trailer would happen after the Great War. I don't think they would celebrate before, but then I could be wrong. It could just be me overthinking that. However, it's around about the 21st or 27th of October 2102 is when Fallout 76 is going to be set. Now, around this time on the West Coast, we had around about October 27th, 2077, the soldiers sealed Mariposa military base and headed into the desert. And then 25 years later, Harold, with his caravan hub, met up with Richard Gray, who went to Mariposa military base to try to discover the source of the mutants that were attacking his caravan. Gray lands into a vat of their FEV, their mutated chemical, which obviously was trying to create mutants and bits like that, trying to get rid of the plague as well. I believe was their original goal. After a couple of months of floating in the vat, Richard has evolved. He's now become more of a super mutant himself. He actually starts absorbing other people that he meets into himself. He also starts to create super mutants himself, trying to create an army. He starts absorbing circuitry into him and basically takes over the Mariposa base. And what he wants to do is he wants to create unity. So he wants to combine the Wasteland together as one being. And he thinks that if he can just create, if everything's a mutant, then everything is one, everything is united. So
it's okay, I'm friendly.
In 2155, he moved to the LA Vault. This was with his big impacted army of super mutants. So what I think we're going to see in this new Fallout is essentially the start of the super mutants. So by 2102, clearly there was mutants around. There were more mutated animals, as Harold would describe them. But you would expect there to be some sort of humans who had mutated. Ghouls shouldn't be around too much because a lot of that was explained as it took time. It took time for people to become ghouls. So you've got to kind of weigh up where would it be? We're right at the start. We're only 25 years after the Great War. The Vault was actually supposed to open after 20, but 25 years after the Great War, how far have these things essentially evolved? And I don't think they would have evolved far enough to see the super mutants we see today in the Fallout series. the ghouls we see in the Fallout series, possibly more akin to the Fallout 3 series, where you do have quite a lot of ghouls who are friendly to you and you can interact with, and they work for normal people. Possibly even super mutants are more akin to humans. Maybe they've either grown an extra arm, they've started to I don't know, go green. They've started to have bits falling off. So similar to a ghoul, but they still retain. Basically, I just think that the enemies that we've seen before will retain their basic humanity for a bit longer. Whereas a lot of the super mutants, they're quite eager to attack straight away. A lot of the mutated animals are just quite eager to attack. I think they'll be a little bit more. I think some of them will be a bit shyer. So like the mole rats and the bloat flies, those sort of things might not attack you quite as readily as they do nowadays. I think it will be more of a case of they'll be a bit scared. They're not sure what's going on. Their physiology is changing. Once again, I could be very wrong about that, but I just think that it's just a new chapter for everything. So it's how they started, and as you evolve, as you get more used to how your body is reacting, you do tend to chance go more single-minded towards things. So whether that be these things have been mutated, so their minds have been changed, so as they adapt to that, rather than the fear, they just get the aggression. So one of the things that was commented on was that Vault 76 would be on the West Coast. I'm going to kind of throw that out the window now. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility, but I'm going to throw that out the window because, as I said, with the Mariposa military base, why do I keep saying Mariposa? The Mariposa military base being on the West Coast, with Harold and with Richard Grey, and that whole story, which was set around that time, I think that story's done. I think that story's played out, and I think they're going to want to move somewhere new. The other thing that kind of pushes me away is that Vault 76 started construction in February 2065. It was finished in October 2069. However, in March 2069, Vault 13 was completed, and it was called the last Vault to be completed on the West Coast. That is what it's classed as in the official timeline. So if it's the last Vault to be completed on the West Coast, that would mean that Vault 76 isn't on the West Coast. Now that could mean it's slightly more inland, rather than being right on the coast. It's a terminology thing on this case, but I do think that what they're actually going to do, and trailers nowadays are very clever to just give you, just sort of spoon feed you little tidbits of information. So possibly the John Denver song, Country Roads, West Virginia, that's a possibility. That their biggest city would be Charleston. They could use Charleston, the surrounding areas. Not sure about that. Some people would say it's New York City. It's hard to tell. It's hard to kind of have an inkling as to what sort of ideas they have on location. I would personally say West Virginia would be actually quite a good one. It would be getting out of what we've seen before, giving people a chance to look at a countryside which is very different to what we have seen in the past. But I think that if you are going to kind of do it, you need to have the lore there. You need to have areas there which you can say, you know, this is because of this is because of that. So possibly New York City would be quite good, because that was where most of the bombs hit, and as the bombs hit, they obviously devastated New York. So it would be nice to sort of see a very, very destroyed New York City. Maybe you come out of the vault. Also, New York would be probably one of the places that Vault-Tec would be at its best. Would have one of its biggest headquarters. Obviously the LA branch, which Richard Grey goes to with the show home, that it's LA is where the headquarters actually is of Vault-Tec, the main headquarters. But they would have had quite a big company building in New York, I would imagine. Possibly, possibly not. However, as Vault 76 is a controlled one, you would possibly like to have it quite close to one of your main vaults, one of your main headquarters, so that you can keep an eye on it, because it is a control vault. It's not a chuck people in and see what happens when you give half the vault guns and half the vault you don't, or where you say one person has to die every year or everyone dies, just to see if how much people will do morally. So some of the stuff that Vault-Tec did was just madness. But with this being a control vault, nothing would have been too out of the ordinary. They would have just lived their normal lives. But we'll see. So I'm going to say almost I will rule out the West Coast right now. Possible West Virginia, but I would be looking at one of the big cities along the East Coast to house the next Fallout game. I think they're going to go really big with this. I think they're going to really show the devastation of this, because it is right up at the beginning. So the next point I want to make out is that I'm going to slightly contradict myself here. So where I say it's not going to be on the West Coast, the thing with it is in the trailer it says that they are celebrating Reclamation Day. So a lot of people are saying that we're reclaiming the land. It's the vault. The vault is opening. We're now reclaiming the land. We're going out into the wasteland. Hurrah, huzzay, loving it. But it is exactly 25 years after the reclamation of Anchorage. Anchorage was liberated in about 2077. Not exactly sure on the timeline. There is ones that say it was around about January. There is also ones that say it was around about late September, early October time. So you wouldn't. This brings you back to the point I made earlier about they would do it a couple of days after the Great War, perhaps because maybe records at the time were lost. There's so many conflicting views from people that you read on their dossiers. So actually, I think maybe October 20, maybe that October 23rd. Nope, not October 23rd. My apologies. October 27th was kind of their day. That was when the Great War was essentially over and they had to redo their lives. Maybe that was the day that the word got down to the vault that this is what had happened. But the Reclamation Day could be that they're going out, they're reclaiming the world. But I like to think that actually they're not going out to reclaim the world. They're actually celebrating instead the 25th anniversary of the reclamation of Anchorage and the liberation of Anchorage in 2077. I could be wrong, and once again, they have explored this in the Fallout series before, and they don't usually go back to things. They will, as sort of an offhanded comment, like, oh, this is what happened. They will see people, like if they set the next one 200 years in the future from where, let's say Fallout 76 set in 2102, the next one, if it gets set in 2200, they would reference what had happened in the previous game. However, they don't usually tend to redo entire sort of stories. So they did do the Anchorage liberation as part of the DLC, but it was a simulation. So when Anchorage was liberated, it is actually possible that your character could have been there. So once again, it's a controlled vault. So there must be people there in this vault. They've been selected for a reason. Maybe these are the survivors of the Anchorage liberation. Maybe you play one of the characters. Grown up, you would still have your adults, your main army, but you would have been a grunt. You're now in your mid-30s. Hang on, what would you be actually? You'd be in your mid-40s. Now looking at the trailer, there is a lot of stuff, kid stuff, around the room. So it could be a case of you might be playing as very similar to Fallout 3. We're actually playing the kid and you grow up. So yes, it is the 27th of October, but then it skips ahead 10 years, where you as the kids grown up, you've listened to all these stories of the Anchorage liberation, and that's what they might be celebrating, is Reclamation Day. It could be either one. Either one would actually be viable. They'll have a good script behind it. They always do. This is Bethesda. But that's something that I haven't heard anyone say is about the Anchorage reclamation. So that was obviously, once again, that's a West Coast area that you would have to be part of, and it does contradict that I say it won't be on the West Coast. However, timelines can be rewritten. So if they say that it's a slight wording issue where, yes, Vault 13 was the last one on the West Coast. However, Vault 76 was meant to be open before. However, it was delayed, or it started before Vault 13. Maybe they might say, there was a wording in the lore and change the timeline slightly. That's all I want to talk about today on that. There was one more bit in the trailer which someone pointed out, which was there's a hat on the bed which looks very close to what the mysterious stranger would wear across the Fallout games. I think that's more of a kind of an Easter egg to put people off course, because to me it just looks like a generic hat. It could be very similar to the one that the Vault-Tec guy wears when he comes to you in Fallout 4. It's just a hat. I don't think that means anything. I could be wrong, but I don't think that means too much. I think that's just a little Easter egg shoved in there for the fans. And the main other thing that I have been hearing is that it will have multiplayer. Now, I think this game is absolutely ripe for multiplayer, and I think it can learn, and please forgive me for saying this, but it can learn from State of Decay on how to do a multiplayer, where you don't need to necessarily make it an MMO, but if they have the idea to do it, if they can create an MMO in the Fallout world, I will categorically go on statement right now, and I will say I'll actually bet good money that the next Elder Scrolls series will also have MMO attributes to it. So I think Fallout is going to be a dual game. If it has the multiplayer, it'll be a dual game. So there is a lot of games out there where you can play them single player, and then you can jump online. So you can build your character up in single player, you can jump online, and either some games, like for instance GTA, you start as a new character. There are a few games which used to be that you'd build your character up, and that was a character you then used in multiplayer, which was quite a nice touch as well. But FIFA was the one that destroyed that, where you could get your character up to a level 95 and then go online on a pro club. But you could do things where you would go into the options, play as your player, knock all of them down to nothing, so that they couldn't run, they couldn't tackle, they couldn't save anything, they can't pass. You then just do all your passing accomplishments, all your shooting accomplishments, all of your skill accomplishments. That was annoying, and I know that that EA pulled away from that, which thank God they did, because it was absolutely annoying. However, I think a game like Fallout, being an MMO, could be absolutely brilliant. You could have your settlements. You could use those settlements to do raids. It would be very much like a lot of the survival games nowadays. The Rusts and the DayZs, I suppose. DayZ's not quite there, but the Conan Exiles, where you can build your base, you can get a group of friends, you have them all part of the same clan, all part of your same traders or bandits or heroes. You can play it however you want, but you can keep the single player story as a separate entity, or you can incorporate it as part of the multiplayer. And I hope that they keep the single player as a separate entity, because that is what Fallout and Bethesda are really good at. I think Bethesda has always, with the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series, have produced absolutely top quality single player games. And I think that's what they need to keep. They need to keep the single player aspect. There are people who come and they buy Fallout, they buy Elder Scrolls to play a single player. Look at Elder Scrolls now. it is still going. It is on the Switch, it is on VR, it is on Xbox 360, it's on Xbox One, it's on PS3, it's on PS4. I wouldn't be surprised to see that it will come on the DS at some point, that it will go on to...
I'm with the minute.
They're so... It's such a huge game. I wouldn't be surprised if you had the Elder Scrolls Skyrim on mobile, if you had Skyrim on your old Mega Drive, for crying out loud. They just really have pushed that game, and it is a fantastic game.
We're rebuilding.
Most people will say that with the Fallout series that actually New Vegas is the best game. So take a hint from that, Bethesda, and try and mix everything you've done. Have the crazy vaults, have the vaults where people are just randomly shouting stuff at you, have your big storyline, overarching storyline, and then do your multiplayer. You've got a brand new engine, and as I say, what will happen is Skyrim, or not Skyrim, sorry, the next Elder Scrolls game will get that engine, and it will get that multiplayer. Yes, you've got ESO, you've got the Elder Scrolls Online, which is a nice game, don't get me wrong, but it didn't do of it what they could have done. And I feel that if they have a single player experience, a single player Elder Scrolls experience that people can battle through and really actually feel like they've accomplished it, then they could still do that MMO aspect, the aspect of where you do come in and you are, you know, you don't have to start off in a jail. You could choose any race, any sort of character from the Elder Scrolls franchise, and then you can start where you want. Do it that sort of way. But for now, this has been Fallout 76. Well, it's been Fallout 4, but it's been talks about Fallout 76. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have anything you want to ask, if you want to troll, if you want to do anything, just comment below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay notified. And I'll see you next time.